Uncensored, no holds barred talk. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is the Global Reality Radio Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network with me, your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being here for another live edition of the show. It is Tuesday, May 1st, 2012 into Wednesday, May the 2nd, 2012. Thanks for being here with us tonight for another late night Moonbat edition of the broadcast. And we really not a lot of material today. I kind of had to take it down a little bit because there wasn't really not really a lot to talk about tonight, but so I just pushed the show back a little bit and decided, well, you know, really not really a lot to talk about, but if I maybe if I extend it a little bit, we'll be able to at least find enough to talk about to fill the time. So that's what we're going to try to do here tonight. Thanks for being with us. My website where this broadcast originates from is theglobalreality.com. It's theglobalreality.com. I don't know what was going on last night. I just didn't see. I don't look at the chat room a whole lot when I'm live during the show. But apparently there was some sound issues going on with the show last night, but it sounded okay on the archive. But we had some like spook activity in the chat room last night. It was pretty funny. But I don't know if it's one and the same. And then something weird happened with our website today. It was down for a while. But man, I think Manhydra got it fixed and it seems to be working okay now. But I don't know. I just thought it was strange. I just thought it was kind of a strange thing, right here on May 1st, May Day, birthday of the Illuminati, of Weishoff's Illuminati. And all that stuff, Beltane, all this stuff. I don't know. I just thought that was quite the comical timing for that stuff to be taking place there, right now with where we're at. So, but not a whole lot of news tonight, but I will cover what stories I do have. I love to have emails from you if you've got something you want to send in live during the show. Yeah, new budgets. Yeah, I was about to say that's what I was saying last night. I think the boys got a new budget to come and fuck with me. They fuck with me till they run out of cash, and then they get new budget expenditures. They come back and they troll for a month or so and get sent home with their tail between their legs as they always do, because they never seem to ever say anything or have anything to contend with any of the information. It's always just cut downs and put downs, personal attacks on me. It's just ridiculous. They have nothing. And you're not fooling anybody. So keep on trolling there, troll bait. Nobody's buying your crap. Love to have emails from you. If you have stuff you want to have me talk about here on the show, you have questions, Global Reality Show @gmail.com. It's Global Reality Show @gmail.com. In lieu of having phone calls, we'd like to have emails. Anytime you want to send those in is great, but tonight too as well. We don't really have a lot of those to get into tonight either. So I think we might have a couple here. Let me look through the stack. Check this out. I haven't followed back up on this yet, but I'll check it out. I don't know. Maybe some of you know something about this out there. I don't know. It says, Dear Josh Reeves, my name is Jacob Appelman. My website is gofindtheothers.com. I produce FM radio 90.1 KKFI talk shows in the Kansas City, Missouri area. I make audio documentaries covering a wide range of topics, as well as having my own podcraft. I don't know what that is. The correspondence is in regard to my podcraft. Okay. The Next Step radio show, season 2, is about to kick off, and I would be honored to have you as a guest at your convenience. I pre-record via Skype or the telephone, so scheduling you is at your ease as well. If you'd be willing to join me for a conversation, all things Josh Reeves, shoot me back an email. We can set up a time and outline for said conversation. With sincere respect, Jacob Appelman. Okay. All right. Well, I'll do that. Why not? Here's one from John. He says, "Hi, Josh. Have you seen this article?" And yeah, I did actually was looking at that article today, John. And we'll get into it here in a bit. Essentially, the scientists show that the future actions may influence past events, at least when it comes to the messy, mind-bending world of quantum physics. Yeah, we'll get into that in just a bit, John, but I do appreciate you pointing that out to me. This is from Michael. He says, in reference to last night's reading, I'm wondering if prayer is causing these spirits to coalesce. The power of Christian prayers is a powerful thing. Maybe the mass wishes and genuine good-willed thoughts being put forth into the ether via those tools is somehow creating this. How fitting that Bible thumpers would be inadvertently practicing magic and summoning the very same creatures they preach against. And I replied back to Michael, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And I think that does pretty much sum it up. And I've had those, it's one of the many things I've had, kind of those hunches I've had all my whole life. I never really had any evidence to back up or prove, but later, researching, you find it to be true that, what we're told is good is evil, and what we're told is evil is good. I mean, that really does seem to be the case, I think, when you study this stuff. So there you go, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's where you can send in emails. My website where this broadcast originates from is globalrealityshow@gmail.com. I know people have been, I've had a lot of people complaining about the audio and stuff lately. I'll be honest with you, I'm just doing the best I can with what I have over here. I had to get a new preamp. Got somebody to do that. We had a listener donate $200. I ended up getting one that cost $500. But it's not a tube preamp, and that's what I was using before. So I've had emails from people saying that the volume of my voice is considerably lower, and that is because I'm not using a tube preamp anymore. So it doesn't really have the oomph that tube preamp had. Even though this is a nice preamp, so. I don't know. I mean, I think it's like $250, something like that, after shipping and all that to get one. But I mean, that's all I can say. If, somebody wants to help out on that, fine. But that's kind of what it is. I had to start using an actual audio interface to be able to get the signal from this preamp into the stream computer, which is a totally separate computer, because you're talking about mono signals that normally go into mixing boards are going into mono. And nobody wants to listen to a stream coming out of one thing, so you have to run two separate outputs into the two separate inputs of the audio card on a separate computer, and then hope that they're somewhat balanced out, which I know my voice most of the time, a lot of times, is not balanced out anymore. There's not much I can do about that either. I don't know. If I had $1,000 to go play with, to go buy a whole bunch of new studio gear, a lot of this stuff I've had for so many years, since even before I started doing radio. This compressor I've had for a long time, and this microphones and all this different stuff, white cables. But all I can say is I'm doing the best I can with what I've got over here, folks. I understand it's not always. Some days it's really good, some days it's not so good. I'm doing the best I can. I just, sometimes we don't even have enough money to pay the bills, much less be able to, buy new gear and all that stuff. So, I had several emails about that instead of reading, 10 different emails about it. I'd rather just say that. But, I listened to the past couple of shows. For me, when I listened to the archive, sounded good to me. I don't know, the Sunday night music show sounded good to me. It sounded good to me a little. I guess it was a little crackly or something last night, but I don't know. It should be sounding. It sounds okay to me now. But that's really what's going on with it. That's what's changed in the sound. That's why it went from being one sound, very consistent all the time, to being not so consistent, because I essentially had to change a lot of the setup and a lot of the way that the sound was going from my microphone into the computer with the stream in it. And I won't lie to you, it's jury rigged over here to all to hell. There's, so there you go. Just instead of having to read a whole bunch of emails, to 5 different emails or 10 different emails to explain why the sound sucks. There you go. I've definitely heard worse out there in the realm of talk radio. Let's just say that. All right, let's just start with the news tonight then. Top 5 things that cause brain farts. Oh, well, I'm all ears to this. I have fucking brain farts all the time. Our brains balk at the thought of 4-dimensional hypercubes, quantum mechanics, or an infinite universe, and understandably so, but our gray matter is generally adept at processing sensory data from the mundane objects and experiences of daily life. However, there are a few glaring exceptions. Here are 5 common things that unexpectedly throw our brains for a loop, revealing some of the bizarre quirks in the structure and function that usually manage to slip under the radar. Doors. Do you ever walk into a room with some purpose in mind to get something, perhaps, only to completely forget what that purpose was? Turns out, doors themselves are to blame for these strange memory lapses. Psychologists at the University of Notre Dame have discovered that passing through a doorway triggers what is known as an event boundary in the mind, separating one set of thoughts and memories from the next, just as exiting through a doorway signals the end of a scene in a movie. Your brain files away the thoughts you had in the previous room and prepares a blank slate for the new locale. Mental event boundaries usually help us organize our thoughts and memories as we move through the continuous and dynamic world. But when we're trying to remember that the thing we came in here to do or get or maybe find, they can be frustrating indeed. Which bugs you more, the whine of a digital alarm clock, the sound of a truck backing up, or the shrill reminders that your smoke detector is running out of batteries? Fine, they're all terrible. Beeps are practically the soundtrack of the modern world, but they're extremely irritating because each one induces a tiny brain fart. We didn't evolve hearing beeps, so we struggle to grasp them. Natural sounds are created from a transfer of energy, often from one object striking another, such as a stick hitting a drum. In that case, energy is transferred into the drum and then gradually dissipates, causing the sound to decay over time. Our perceptual system has evolved to use that decay to understand the event, to figure out what made the sound and where it came from. Beep sounds, on the other hand, are like cars driving at 60 miles an hour, then suddenly hitting a wall, as opposed to gradually slowing to a stop. The sound doesn't always change over time, and it doesn't fade away, so our brains are baffled about what they are and where they're coming from. Just as we didn't evolve hearing beeps, we also didn't evolve seeing photographs. Like your grandmother learning to use the internet, but never developing an intuitive feel for it. We consciously get photographs, but our subconscious brains can't quite separate them from the objects or people that are pictured. Case in point, studies show that people are much less accurate when throwing darts at pictures of JFK, babies, or people that they like than when throwing darts at Hitler or their worst enemy. Another study found that people start to sweat profusely when asked to cut up photographs of their cherished childhood possessions. Lacking millions of years of practice, our brains fail when it comes to separating appearance from reality. Do you ever feel your phone vibrating in your pocket or purse only to retrieve it and be met by eerie black screen lifelessness? If, like most people, you occasionally experience these phantom vibrations, it turns out that because your brain is jumping to wrong conclusions in an attempt to make sense of the chaos that is your life. Brains are bombarded with sensory data that must filter out the useless noise and pick up on the important signals. In prehistoric times, we would have constantly misinterpreted curvy sticks in the corner of our vision for snakes. Today, most of us are technocentric, and so our brains misinterpret everything from the rustle of clothing to the growling of a stomach, jumping to the conclusion that we're getting a call or text and actually causing us to hallucinate a full-on phone vibration. Oh, man, yeah. That's totally real. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen with people. I shit you not. This is probably one of the reasons why I don't own a phone. I kid you not. I had, gosh, it was forever ago. It was like 2004. I think something like that. 2003, 2004. I had for a very short time, maybe about 6 months, I had a prepaid cell phone. The only time I ever had one. And I fucking hated it. And because it's like, for some reason, it's like when you have a phone, people feel the need to just call you constantly. Even if they really don't need anything. They just want to call all the time. I'm like, why are you calling me right now? No. But my point is, I shit you not, it's the honest to God truth. Even though I only had that thing for a small amount of time, for years after it hasn't happened in a while, but for a good, I would say, I don't know, a good 4 or 5 years after that, I would occasionally think I would hear that thing beep because I got so accustomed to the fucking fingernail on the chalkboard beeping sound that thing would make. And so now it's not as bad now. Some of the ringtones have gotten better, more polyphonic, better sounding, but god damn, there for a while, if I heard a cell phone go off, especially if I was in a car, so I would just want to grab the motherfucker and throw it out the window, dude. I'm not kidding you. It would just be like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. They still kind of are, but god damn. Ever noticed how car wheels can look like they're spinning backwards in the movies? This is because movie cameras capture still images of a scene at a finite rate, and the brain fills in the gaps between these images by creating the illusion of continuous motion between the similar frames. If the wheel rotates most of the way around between one frame and the next, the most obvious direction of motion for the brain is to pick up on is backwards, since the direction suggests the minimal difference between the two frames. However, wheels can also appear to spin backwards in real life too, which is weirder. The leading theory to explain the continuous wagon wheel illusion, as it is known, holds that the brain's motion perception system samples its input as a series of discrete snapshots, much like a movie camera. So our brains are effectively filming their own movies of the external world, but not always at a fast enough frame rate to perceive the wheels in the scene spinning the right way. So it's interesting. It's nice to hear brain farts explained. Let's go from the interesting to the absolutely ridiculous and propagandish horseshit, vile puke coming out of the Pentagon, DOD, Obama administration. This is the funniest fucking shit I've ever read in my life. And it's very easy to debunk that this is bullshit if you read it a little bit. Osama bin Laden death anniversary, 10 things we've learned about the terror leader since the raid. 1 year ago today, on May 1st, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed by U.S. Navy SEALs in a daring raid on his compound near Islamabad, Pakistan. Remember that. Near Islamabad, Pakistan. That's supposedly where he had been the whole time, right? Through thousands of documents seized during the assault, many of them slated to be declassified later this week, we've learned a lot about the terror leader since his death. He wanted to kill President Obama. According to the trove of documents uncovered by U.S. forces, bin Laden regularly ordered his subordinates to plan new attacks, including assassinations of President Barack Obama and General David Petraeus, NBC News reported. According to the Washington Post, bin Laden wanted to kill Obama in part because he felt Vice President Joe Biden was unprepared to step in as commander-in-chief. Bin Laden's planned assassination of Obama involved hijacking Air Force One, the Post said. Obama is head of infidelity, and killing him automatically will make Biden take over the presidency. Bin Laden wrote in a message to one of his top lieutenants, the paper said, Biden is totally unprepared for that post, which will lead the U.S. into a crisis. And all of this despite an increasingly limited cadre of operatives capable of carrying out such attacks. Now, the reason you know that this is bullshit is because if this was actually the real Osama bin Laden, and we know it absolutely was not because this was probably written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone or something like that. I swear to God, they get comedy writers like, South Park guys, people like that, to write these fucking phony Al-Qaeda letters and these phony Al-Qaeda scripts. I swear they get those kind of people to write it, and then those people go on their shows and make fun of it, and then it looks like, oh, ha, 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 they're so hip and edgy, I think they're writing that stuff. But the way you know this is bullshit is because if bin Laden was allegedly in Pakistan for that long and, had to know what was going on there with people who were involved with the Inter-Services Intelligence Agency, bin Laden would have known that Biden had been the go-between prior to 9/11 for the Pakistani ISI and was getting the money to the hijackers. He was involved in that. So you're going to tell me bin Laden's going to say, oh, yeah, Biden, he's not prepared for that, blah, 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 blah. This is horseshit. This was not written by him. They go on to say he wanted to blow up oil tankers, that he was a hoarder. He had an extensive porn collection. He liked to watch himself. I mean, this is hilarious. You guys have to read this because this is the most made-up horseshit I have ever read in my life. I can't even do it justice reading it for you here. It just doesn't even do it justice. I'll drop a link in the chat room. You read it for yourself. I can't even do it justice. It's just that fucking hilarious. Let's see here. Oh, here's the article that John was referencing earlier in the email that we read from him. Weird. Quantum entanglement can reach into the past. Spooky quantum entanglement just got spookier. Entanglement is a weird state where two particles remain intimately connected, even when separated over vast distances, like two die that always show the same numbers when rolled. For the first time, scientists have intertangled particles after they've been measured and may no longer even exist. If that sounds baffling, even the researchers agree it's a bit radical. In a paper reporting the experiment published online April 22nd in the journal Nature Physics, whether these two particles are entangled or separable has been decided after they have been measured, wrote the researchers, led by Zayal Song Ma of the Institute for Quantum Optics and Quantum Information at the University of Vienna. Essentially, the scientists showed that future actions may influence past events, at least when it comes to the messy, mind-bending world of quantum physics. In the quantum world, things behave differently than they do in the real macroscopic world we can see and touch around us. In fact, when quantum entanglement was first predicted by the theory of quantum mechanics, Albert Einstein expressed his distaste for the idea, calling it spooky action at a distance. The researchers, taking entanglement a step further than ever before, started with two sets of light particles called photons. The basic setup goes like this. Both pairs of photons are entangled, so the two particles in the first set are entangled with each other, and the two particles in the second set are entangled within each other as well. Then one photon from each pair is sent to a person named Victor. Of the two particles that are left behind, one goes to Bob and the other goes to Alice. But now Victor has control over Alice and Bob's particles. If he decides to entangle the two photons he has, then Alice and Bob's photons, each entangled with one of Victor's, also becomes entangled with each other. And Victor can choose to take this action at any time, even after Bob and Alice may have measured, changed, or destroyed their photons. The fantastic new thing is that this decision to entangle two photons can be done at a much later time, said researcher co-author Anton Zellinger, also of the University of Vienna. They may no longer exist. Such an experiment had first been predicted by physicist Asher Perez in 2000, but had not been realized until now. The way you entangle them is to send them all onto a half-silvered mirror. Zellinger told Live Science it reflects half of the protons and transmits half. If you send two photons, one to the right and one to the left, then each of the two photons have forgotten where they come from. They lose their identities and become entangled. Zellinger said the technique could one day be used to communicate between superfast quantum computers which rely on entanglement to store information. Such a machine has not yet been created, but experiments like this are a step toward that goal, the researchers say. The idea is to create two particle pairs and send one to a computer, then one to another. Then, if these two photons are entangled, the computers could use them to exchange information. This is pretty interesting, you know, with the way that the media has been blowing up the Trayvon thing and this whole racial divide and conquer thing they've been running. You know, WorldNet Daily, they may be a CMP-controlled news outlet. They are the only news outlet allowed in Council for National Policy meetings. But I have to say, I do have to agree with this. There's outrage in Norfolk, Virginia today after a white couple was attacked by a group of a dozen black teenagers, up to 100 total. And the local newspaper did not report on the incident for 2 weeks, despite the victims being employees of the newspaper. Ooh, I mean, that's just blatant. I mean, it'd be one thing, I understand, you know, it'd be one thing they didn't report on this, but I mean, with all the time they've dedicated to this Trayvon thing. I mean, 100 people beating 2 people, no matter what color they are, should always be reported, and especially if those people that got beat were employees of the newspaper. They didn't bother reporting it? I mean, who cares a fuck what color were they, what color were the people that got beat, or who gives a fuck what color the people that were doing the beating were? Well, the matter is, 100 people beat the fuck out of 2 people for no good goddamn reason, and the victims who worked for the newspaper didn't even get their story reported. With all this other crap that they're blowing out of proportion. So, you know, I mean, normally I don't get into that, they covered the black story, so then they should have covered the white story. That's not the point here. I mean, the point is it doesn't matter what fucking color they were. It matters the fact that 100 people in broad daylight beat the crap out of 2 people for no good goddamn reason, and the media goes to sleep on it. Big shocker here. I mean, not really a big surprise, but a good article nonetheless. Considering Monsanto has the lockdown on pesticides, this is not a real big surprise. And again, starts to tell us more and more that Monsanto's not just the big behemoth beast that it is. It's much more sinister than that. I mean, Monsanto is, it's the modern day Reich eugenics setup. Pesticides, ubiquitous among not only the food supply but farms and homes worldwide, have been found to be creating lasting changes in overall brain structure. Changes that have been linked to lower intelligence levels and decreased cognitive function. Previously linked in scientific research to the massive obesity crisis, pesticides are now known to impact the mind in ways that are still not entirely understood. Despite these findings, they are continually touted as safe by the profit-hungry chemical industry. The study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences observed pregnant mothers in New York who were exposed to a pesticide known as chlorifos, CPF, banned in 2001 from household use. The chemical is still used worldwide in agriculture. That's right, this is a chemical that is not permitted to be used in your home, though it is perfectly fine to spray it on your food. What the researchers found was that women who had higher levels of CPF had children with significant abnormalities in brain structure compared to mothers with low exposure levels. Perhaps the most startling finding by the academic team is that all of the women in the study, of which there were 369 total, were actually below the U.S. established thresholds of acute exposure. Therefore, even low to moderate levels of exposure can seriously impact brain function, and a large amount of exposure could be even more dangerous and destructive. Lead researcher Virginia Rod, professor at the Mailman School of Public Health, summarized the findings. Toxic exposure during this critical period can have far-reaching effects on brain development and behavioral functioning. The findings will certainly cause a ripple in the pesticide industry, though a larger issue is why this pesticide is being used in your food after it was banned from being used indoors. If the pesticide is damaging by simply being used in the same living space as a human, how could it be considered safe to put in your body? It's a great question. Mysterious hum only Canadians can hear is debated. This was from ABC News. The cities of Windsor, Ontario, and Rogue River, Michigan are separated geographically by only a river. But when it comes to one highly annoying noise, they are worlds apart. That noise, described as a low-pitched rumble, has ranked citizens of Windsor since last year, prompting hundreds of complaint calls and leading one resident to create a Facebook page and spurring a senior aide to Canada's foreign minister to visit the city to investigate. Testing conducted by the Canadian government determined the sound, known by locals as the Windsor hum, came from the area of Zug Island, a 600-acre steel industrial site on the U.S. side of the Detroit River. The only problem, the residents of the Detroit suburb have no idea what their Canadian friends are talking about or hearing. The mayor of River Rogue, under whose jurisdiction Zug Island lies, told Canadian questioners last year that his city budget does not allow for testing to track down the noise, according to the CBC. Further, the city's residents say that they can't even hear the noise that the Windsor residents say shakes their windows, rattles their shelves, and may even be making them sick. Now, come on, why can't somebody take their ass over there and verify it? You know, if it's going on, take your ass over there and verify it. I don't believe you. We ain't hearing nothing over here. Y'all must be stupid and crazy. Have you gone over here to Canada to our side? I ain't going on no goddamn Canada. Fuck that. Canada. Fuck Canada. Bunch of Canucks up there anyway. The only place I'm hearing noise from is Canada, from politicians complaining. The mayor, Michael Bowler, told the Wall Street Journal, which first reported on the American response. Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality did look at the issue last year, examining whether noise could be caused by new machinery used at Zug, but found nothing, according to the Journal. And pleas made by the Canadians to both the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency have fallen short, with each saying it is a state, not a federal issue. Meanwhile, Canadian officials are plugging on, trying to quiet the noise. Bob Decker, the parliamentary, I'm sorry, we don't see that word very often in the United States. We don't have parliamentary yet, but we will. Bob Decker, the parliamentary secretary to Canada's foreign affairs minister, visited Windsor and Detroit late last month and met with both American and Canadian officials to address the issue, according to the CBC. Still, the mysterious hum continues. Some dog just shit themselves. The government of Canada takes this issue very seriously. It's important that we find a solution that works for the people of Windsor. Sorry, Canada, we just don't hear it. You guys are probably catching all of our, cheeseburger gas or McDonald's gas from up here and Starbucks gas. We're just cracking off rounds and, I don't hear a goddamn thing. It's just all the gas is just wafting to Canada. You guys are just getting hammered with it up there to the point where it's like affecting the auditory spectrum. It's like bending sound and light from all the fucking blowing cheeseburger gas we're doing down here. Why are y'all dropping pictures of fucking P-Funk in the chat room? Y'all trying to get fucking funky in the chat room with George Clinton or something? Jesus. U.S. pilots refused to fly the $143 million stealth fighter because of a lack of oxygen in the cockpit. Now, this is insane. I mean, breathing apparatus and oxygen have been standard on planes going, at high altitudes for years. Have they gotten so cheap and so Hebrew on their weapons manufacturers they won't even put air masks in there for the pilots? Oh, you pussy, you don't need no air mask. You're a pilot, boy. Get up there in that plane and fly to the threshold of space and don't even worry about no air. You with Al-Qaeda, boy? Only Al-Qaeda boys need air. You're an American, boy. Get up there and fly that plane for your country. Goddamn air. You don't need no fucking air, boy. Kick some air right in your ass. Get up here and fly that goddamn plane. U.S. fighter pilots have asked not to fly the military's 190 F-22 Raptors that you and I all paid for. Thank you very much. Because of oxygen problems related with the $143 million stealth fighter, an Air Force leader has revealed. General Mike Hostage, commander of Air Combat Command at Langley Air Force Base in Hampton, Virginia, told reporters that a very small number of pilots have asked not to fly the fifth-generation fighter jets or be reassigned. Obviously, it's a very sensitive thing because we're trying to ensure that the community fully understands all that we're doing to try to get a solution. He would not provide exact figures on the number of pilots who have asked not to fly the jets and said each pilot's request would be handled individually. Air Force officials insist the airplane is safe to fly. Hostage noted that he'll fly soon because he won't ask a pilot to do something that he will not. I'm going to check out and fly the airplane so I can understand exactly what it is they're dealing with. The day we figure out what the problem is, I will stop flying the plane because we don't have enough sorties for all our combat aviators to get as much training as they need. The nation's F-22 fighter jets were grounded for 4 months last year after pilots complained of experiencing a lack of oxygen that can cause dizziness and blackouts. Air Force officials said they have taken steps against the problem, but still haven't pinpointed what's causing the hypoxia, even when the body doesn't receive enough oxygen. An Air Force panel is meeting weekly to investigate the problem and has enlisted the help of NASA and the Navy to learn more about what happens in the body under extreme conditions. Hostage spoke during Media Day at the event, highlighting the nation's most advanced fighter plane. So, these guys are, this has been something that's been common knowledge. You do so many, once you go so fast or you're so high, there's a pulse that happens in your body when you break the sound barrier. And, or you get, a large amount of G-force. It can cause you to black out. But this is not a new thing. Pilots have been dealing with that for 50, 60 years now. That's old school news. So why in the most sophisticated airplane that ever has been made that we all paid for is there an issue with pilots not getting enough air? And I'll bet you $1 to donuts is because they scrimped on some design for the oxygen tank. And who cares? Fuck it. If we got to crash 1,000 planes till we get it to work and kill 1,000 pilots, so what? We'll do it. Nobody's going to question us. This is kind of an interesting paradox. I haven't read this article yet, but I just saw it when I was gathering stuff earlier. I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to read this one yet. I'm just going to read this for the first time on air because this sounds like it could be, I don't know, maybe rubbish, but it's maybe rubbish, but to me, it sounds like it might be an interesting premise. Habitable worlds have to be lived in order to sustain life. Now, isn't that interesting? So does that mean if our planet, before there were humans here, didn't become habitable until it had life on it, and someone put life there on it and became habitable? Is that what you're saying? From what we know of the universe, the requirements for life on a planet are liquid water, an atmosphere, and a stable orbit close enough to a star to provide enough heat and warmth. Once this narrow remit, along with a dozen other variables, have been met, then life on planet Earth, at least, can flourish and the planet becomes a habitable home. But now researchers suggest that a planet needs the presence of life to remain habitable. And they suggest it is in our interest to get our heads around this very soon, especially if we wish to colonize the universe. Oh, Jesus, really? Are we really planning that? They really are going to try to colonize the universe, aren't they? Great. Great. More Bieber and more fucking Kardashians, and let's just colonize that garbage and more Kanye. Oh, great. Fucking wonderful. I'm almost voting that some fucking alien race come and wipe us out just for the good of the universe. Jeez Louise. Speaking on recent discovery showing that rocky Earth-like planets are abundant in the universe, Dr. Charlie Lineweaver, lead researcher for the Australian National University Planetary Science Institute. Jesus, how big is your fucking name? Determining whether these planets are habitable has become the new holy grail of astronomy. The newfound abundance of planets combined with a much larger range of inhabited terrestrial environments suggests that habitable planets are common. This increases the probability of finding some kind of extraterrestrial life. But a warning to mankind, he added. Habitability is not just a question of abiotic environmental conditions. The presence of life may be required to maintain the habitability of a planet over billions of years. Planetary habitability is a complex and confusing concept that we are only beginning to get our heads around, but as a species that wants to survive, it is in our interest to get our heads around it soon. Life, by managing its own environment, makes a planet habitable. It has produced adaptive features as a result of Darwinian evolution to live in colder and warmer environments. It's kind of like an adult can live in a higher range of temperatures than a baby can. Lineweaver, along with fellow researcher Aditya Chopra, said that the two most important factors for life are the presence of water and a temperature range between negative 20 degrees Celsius and 122 degrees Celsius. Lineweaver said over the past few decades, our exploration of the Earth has turned up life in all kinds of weird environments where we didn't think life could be in, and we're finding all types of extraterrestrial environments that we didn't know about before. As these two groups expand, they start to overlap in big ways, and that's where habitable planets will be found. The two authors also speculate about the possibility of habitable planets that don't contain life. They say that the conditions for life to form are much narrower than the conditions needed to survive. Lineweaver said we must hunt for planets on which humans could survive and then set up colonies there. He compared cynics to those who criticized Christopher Columbus's proposed trip across the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, that old chestnut, huh? That old Columbus chestnut. Yeah, uh-huh. Fucking made-up horse shit. Fucking Medici Empire motherfucker. Sitting on a landmine, the huge eruptions of the supervolcano under Yellowstone could be more frequent than scientists thought. Uh-oh. Remember that in that 2012 flick? That's where it all kicked off, right? A supervolcano eruption is the most catastrophic natural disaster that can hit our planet. Short of an asteroid impact, and scientists now believe America's Yellowstone is more active than we thought. 2 million years ago, an eruption of the supervolcano darkened the skies with ash from Southern California to the Mississippi River, releasing more than 500 cubic miles of ash into the sky. Now, scientists believe that it was followed by a second eruption around 6,000 years ago, leading to fears explosive volcanism from Yellowstone is more common than scientists originally thought. Researchers at Washington State University and the Scottish University's Environmental Research Center say the biggest Yellowstone eruption, which created the 2-million-year-old Huckleberry Ridge deposit, was actually two different eruptions at least 6,000 years apart. The Yellowstone volcano's previous behavior is the best guide of what it will do in the future, says Ben Ellis, co-author and postdoctoral researcher at Washington State University School of the Environment. This research suggests explosive volcanism from the Yellowstone is more frequent than previously thought. The eruption of supervolcanoes dwarfs the eruptions of recent volcanoes and can trigger planetary climate change by inducing ice ages and other impacts. One such event was the Huckleberry Ridge eruption of present-day Yellowstone Park about 2 million years ago, which was more than 2,000 times larger than the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington. Short of a meteor impact, these super eruptions are the worst environmental hazards our planet can face. The results paint a new picture of a more active volcano than previously thought and can help recalibrate the likelihood of another big eruption in the future. Before the researchers split the one eruption into two, it was the fourth largest ever known to science. The new ages for each Huckleberry Ridge eruption reduced the volume of the first event to 2,200 cubic kilometers, roughly 12% less than previously thought. A second eruption of 290 cubic kilometers took place more than 6,000 years later. That first eruption still deserves to be called super, as it is one of the largest known to have occurred on Earth and darkened the skies with ash from Southern California to the Mississippi River. By comparison, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens produced 1 cubic kilometer of ash. The largest blast of Oregon's Mount Masma 6,850 years ago produced 160 kilometers of ash. So, yeah, I mean, this has been on the horizon for quite a while. I mean, I've been saying that for quite a while now, that we could very well could see, an event on this. I think they're keeping a lot of this stuff covered up, keeping a lot of it hush-hush. Mystery as NASA spots black hole shoot out super X-ray emission 3,000 times greater than usual. This is highly interesting. A remarkable outburst from a black hole has astronomers puzzled after they saw X-ray output increase by about 3,000 times. The black hole is located in M83, a spiral galaxy about 15 million light years from Earth. And the huge output suggests there is a population of older, volatile black holes that we have yet to learn about. The flash in the skies was noted by NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory, a space-based telescope which was launched in orbit in 1999. Using Chandra, astronomers found the new ultra-luminous X-ray source within the galaxy. Ultra-luminous sources emit more luminous energy than is thought possible by a traditional black hole. They are rare items, with only a couple spotted in each of our neighboring galaxies. Indeed, one has not been discovered in our own Milky Way galaxy. No sign of the ULX was found in X-ray images taken by the Einstein Observatory in 1980, ROSAT in 1994, the European Space Agency's XMM Newton in 2003 and 2008, or NASA's Swift Observatory in 2005. The flare-up must have been caused by the black hole receiving material from its companion star and the sighting by Chandra. Along with pictures taken in the years before, it helped show this to be a type of black hole never before seen. The companion to the black hole in M83 is likely a giant red star at least 500 million years old, with a mass less than 4 times of that of our sun's. What surprised the astronomers was that the black holes do not usually show periods of changing dormancy or activity. You know what this means, right? We're about to get blasted with solar particles, folks. Our We're about to evolve if they're not filtering all this shit out with chemicals and HARP and everything else. Chemtrails. Roberto Soria of the Curtin University in Australia, who led the study, said the flaring up of this ULX took us by surprise and was a sure sign we have discovered something new about the way black holes grow. Co-author William Blair of Johns Hopkins University said, if the ULX only had been observed during its peak of X-ray emission in 2010, the system easily could have been mistaken for a black hole with a massive, much younger stellar companion of about 10 to 20 million years old. Another co-author, Kip Kuntz, did I say Kip Kuntz? His name's Kip Kuntz. What? A co-author, Kip Kuntz. Boy, what a name. Your mama named you Kip Kuntz? Kipkuntz. I am not kidding. Kip Kuntz. Kipkuntz. Kip Kuntz. Boy, what to talk about. Fucked with. My goodness. Mama must have hated you, son. It's becoming clear there are two cases of ULX, said Kip Kuntz. I can't even say the person's name. Hi, I'm Kip Kuntz. One containing young persistently growing black holes, and the other containing old black holes that grow erratically. We were very fortunate to observe the M83 object at just the right time to make before and after comparisons. So, again, more evidence that things are not just happening in our solar system. Whatever's happening right now, this energy shift is going on everywhere, all over the place. Amazing, wild, insane times. Absolutely, indeed. At my website, theglobalreality.com, you'll find a shipping banner there that says May 2012 operating costs. It's sitting on zero right now. We just had to pay the bills for the month. Today was the first, so we are down to low in the account, and we really could need your support. I have a film to make, research to do. We have to keep all this going, so if you haven't supported us recently, please do so, and help us out there at the Chip-In banner. If you want to help out with the film budget, too, there's a Chip-In banner for that. There's a one-time donation button, a monthly subscription, a P.O. box, and an Amazon wish list, so please support our work if you can. We're going to take a break, come back, and get into our series of reading on the astral plane for you here tonight. This is The Global Reality with me, your host, Josh Reeves, and we will be back after a nice... All right, back here with you on The Global Reality, right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being with us tonight for another late-night Moonbat edition of the broadcast. And we're going to be getting into our continued series of reading tonight, The Astral Plane, Its Scenery, Inhabitants, and Phenomenon, picking back up where we left off last night. We started reading from a section about the artificial inhabitants of the astral plane. And we're going to be getting into elementals formed consciously and continue on from there tonight. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. And that's where you find everything to support our work. And thanks to everybody out there who continues to support our work. But again, after we pay the bills and stuff for the month, that leaves us down to zero. And we got in exactly what we needed for the month. So any help that we can get in. We also lost our sponsor. Virginia Marie's Juice Plus didn't last long, lasted a month. Oh, well. Honestly, in a month, it's not long enough to really sell anything. That's why most of the time when I do sponsors, we usually do like a 6-month contract or a year contract or something like that. In the past, when I've done them back, I haven't ever had any on this network, but back when I used to have them when I was on other networks, that's how it was done, and how I'll do it in the future, because it's just not fair for anybody, and especially when it's something I can't endorse, and that wasn't something I had tried or could really endorse. I didn't go searching that out. It found me. It was one of our listeners. He thought it would be a good deal. It was his aunt's company. She didn't want to do it again. That's just basically how it boils down. So, but that puts us in a pickle, because I thought we were going to have that right here at the first of the month, and we didn't. So that that kind of blows. So that's why we do contracts and that kind of stuff. And normally I always do that, and I should have done it in this case, but yeah, c'est la vie. everybody's asking me, so I'm getting messages and stuff, people saying, hey, you see anything Illuminati today? May 1st, blah, blah. And I honestly say I didn't really see much, but I did see one thing that I thought was pretty Illuminati. I have to say, I did see one thing. Jennifer Lopez. I am Jennifer Lopez. What type of flavor the kisses for my pen? Jennifer Lopez attended a press conference to announce her upcoming world tour with Enrique Iglesias, and let's just say that she dressed in style for the occasion. Picking up on the reptile references there. So, to announce this tour with Enrique Iglesias, she shows up in this fucking reptile dress with a goddamn, looks like a real snake all around. The whole thing's completely reptilian. So, yeah. Did I see anything Illuminati today on May 1st, May Day? You bet your ass I did. I saw that. And I always thought that bitch had to be Illuminati something because, honestly, if you want my real honest-to-God opinion about Jennifer Lopez, and it always has been this, even from day one, when she was in that Selena movie, God, I tell you what, from day one I said this about that bitch, and I say it today. No talent, can't sing, not pretty. I have never gotten that. I don't know what, so I guess taste, different strokes, different folks. I don't know. Never got the Jennifer Lopez thing, but I tell you what, they have used her effectively. Let's just say that. So there you go. Yes, the Jennifer Lopez reptilian dress on May 1st was about the most goddamn in-your-face thing I saw today. All right, let's continue on with our reading here. Elementals form consciously. Since such results have been described above have been achieved by the thought force of men who were entirely in the dark as to what they were doing, it will readily be imagined that a magician who understands the subject can see exactly the effect he is producing and may wield immense power along these lines. As a matter of fact, occultists of both the white and dark schools frequently use artificial elementals in their work. A few tasks are beyond the powers of such creatures. When scientifically prepared and directed with knowledge and skill. For one who knows how to do so can maintain a connection with his elemental and guide it, no matter at what distance it may be working, so that it will practically act as though endowed with the full intelligence of its master. Very definite and very efficient guardian angels have sometimes been supplied in this way, though it is probably very rarely that karma permits such a decided interference in a person's life as that would be. In such a case, however, is that of a pupil of the adepts, who might have, in the course of his work for them, to run the risk of attack from forces which his unaided strength would be entirely insufficient to cope. Guardians of this description have been given and have been fully proved their sleepless vigilance and their tremendous power. By some of the more advanced processes of black magic also, artificial elementals of great power may be called into existence, and much evil has been worked in various ways by such entities. But it is true of them, as of the previous class, that if they are aimed at a person whom by reason of his purity of character they are unable to influence, they react with terrible force upon their creator. So that the medieval story of the magician being torn into pieces by the fiends he himself had raised is no mere fable, but may well have an awful foundation in fact. You hear that, black magicians out there? Be careful of who you're casting your negative magics upon, because you never know who's going to be practicing that alternate magic to repel what you're putting out and doing protection magic for themselves. And it's going to come back on you tenfold, so you better watch that, putting out that negative energy like that. Such creatures occasionally, for various reasons, escape from the control of those who were trying to make use of them and become wandering and aimless demons, as do some of those mentioned under the previous heading under similar circumstances. But those that we are considering having much more intelligence and power and much longer existence are proportionately more dangerous. They invariably seek for means for prolonging their life, either by feeding like vampires upon the vitality of human beings, or by influencing them to make offerings to them. And among simple half-savage tribes, they have frequently succeeded by judicious management in getting themselves recognized as village or family gods. Any deity which demands sacrifices involving the shedding of blood may always be set down as belonging to the lowest and most loathsome class of this order. Other, less objectionable types are sometimes content with offerings of rice and cooked food of various kinds. There are parts of India where both these varieties may be found, flourishing even at the present day, and in Africa they are probably comparatively numerous. By means of whatever nourishment they can obtain from their offerings, and still more by the vitality they draw from their devotees, they may continue to prolong their existence for many years or even centuries, retaining sufficient strength to perform occasional phenomena of a mild type in order to stimulate the faith and zeal of their followers, and invariably making themselves unpleasant in some way or other if accustomed sacrifices are neglected. For example, it was asserted recently that in one Indian village the inhabitants had found that whenever, for any good reason, the local deity did not get his or her regular meals, spontaneous fires began to break out with alarming frequency among the cottages, sometimes 3 or 4 simultaneously. In cases where they declared it was impossible to suspect human agency, and other stories of a more or less similar nature will no doubt recur to the memory of any reader who knows something of the out-of-the-way corners of that most wonderful of all countries. The art of manufacturing artificial elementals of extreme virulence and power seems to have been one of the specialities of the magicians of Atlantis. Oh yeah, here we go. Oh yeah. See, now I'm getting all interested, because that's where my head's at right now. The Lords of the Dark Face. One example of their capabilities in this line is given in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, page 427, where we read of the wonderful speaking animals who had to be quieted by an offering of blood, lest they should awaken their masters and warn them of the impending destruction. But apart from these strange beasts, they created other artificial entities of power and energy, so tremendous that in existence even to this day, though it is more than 11,000 years since the cataclysm which overwhelmed their original masters. The terrible Indian goddess whose devotees were impelled to commit in her name the awful crimes of Thuggee, the ghastly Kali, worshipped even to this day with rites too abominable to be described, might well be a relic of a system which had to be swept away even at the cost of the submergence of a continent and the loss of 65 million human lives. Number 3, human artificials. We have now to consider a class of entities which, though it contains but very few individuals, has acquired from its intimate connection with one of the great movements of modern times an importance entirely out of proportion to its numbers. It seems doubtful whether it should appear under the first or third of our main divisions, but though certainly human, it is so far removed from the course of ordinary evolution, so entirely the product of a will outside of its own, that it perhaps falls most naturally into the place among the artificial beings. The easiest way of describing it will be to commence with its history. And to do that, we must once more look back to the great Atlantean race. In thinking of the adepts and schools of occultism of that remarkable people, our minds instinctively revert to the evil practices of which we hear so much in connection with their latter days. But we must not forget that before that age of selfishness and degradation, the mighty civilization of Atlantis had brought forth much that was noble and worthy of admiration. and that among its leaders were some who now stand upon the loftiest pinnacles as yet attained by man. Among the lodges for occult study preliminary to initiation formed by the adepts of the good law was one in a certain part of America, which was then the tributary to one of the great Atlantean monarchs, the divine rulers of the Golden Gate. And though it has passed through many and strange vicissitudes, though it has had to move its headquarters from country to country as each in turn was invaded by the jarring elements of a later civilization, that lodge still exists even at the present day, observing still the same old world ritual, even teaching as a sacred and hidden language the same Atlantean tongue which was used at its foundation so many thousands of years ago. It still remains what it was from the first, a lodge of occultists of pure and philanthropic aims, which can lead those students whom it finds worthy no inconsiderable distance on the road to knowledge, and confers such psychic powers as are in its gift only after the most searching test as to the fitness of the candidate. Its teachers do not stand upon the adept level, yet hundreds have learnt through it how to set their feet upon it, upon the path which has led them to adeptship in later lives. And though it is not in direct communication with the Brotherhood of the Himalayas, there are some among the latter who have themselves been connected with it in former incarnations, and therefore retain a more than ordinarily friendly interest in the proceedings. The chiefs of this lodge, though they have always kept themselves and their society strictly in the background, and have nevertheless done what they could from time to time to assist the progress of truth in the world. And some half-century ago, in despair at the rampant materialism which seemed to be stifling all spirituality in Europe and America, they determined to make an attempt to combat it by somewhat novel methods. In point of fact, to offer opportunities by which any reasonable man could acquire absolute proof of that life apart from the physical body, which it was the tendency of science to deny. The phenomena exhibited were not in themselves absolutely new, since in some form or another we may hear of them all through history. But their definite organization, their production as it were to order, these were features distinctly new to the modern world. The movement they thus set on foot gradually grew into the vast fabric of modern spiritualism. And though it would perhaps be unfair to hold the originators of the scheme directly responsible for many of the results which have followed, we must admit that they have achieved their purpose to the extent of converting vast numbers of people from a belief in nothing in particular to a firm faith in any rate to some kind of future life. This is undoubtedly a magnificent result, though, in the opinion of many of those whose power and knowledge enable them to take a wider view of such matters than we can, it has been attained at too great a cost, since it seems to them that on the whole, the harm done outweighs the good. The method adopted was to take some ordinary person after death, arouse him thoroughly upon the astral plane, instruct him to a certain extent in the powers and possibilities belonging to it, and then put him in charge of a spiritualistic circle. He, in his turn, developed other departed personalities along the same line, and they all acted upon those who sat at their seances and developed them as mediums, and so spiritualism grew and flourished. No doubt living members of the original lodge occasionally manifested themselves in astral form at some of these circles. Perhaps they may do so even now, but in most cases they simply gave such direction and guidance as they considered necessary to the persons they had put in charge. There is little doubt that the movement increased so much more rapidly than they had expected that it soon got quite beyond their control, so that, as has been said, for many of the later developments, they can only be held indirectly responsible. Of course, the intensification of the astral plane life in those persons who were thus put in charge of circles distinctly delayed their natural progress. And though the idea had been that anything lost in this way would be fully atoned for by the good karma gained by helping to lead others to truth, it was soon found that it was impossible to make use of a spirit guide for any length of time without doing him serious and permanent injury. In some cases, such guides were therefore withdrawn, and others substituted for them. In others, it was considered for various reasons undesirable to make such a change, and then a very remarkable expedient was adopted which gave rise to the curious class of creatures we have called human artificials. The higher principles of the original guide were allowed to pass on their long-delayed evolution into the devacanic condition. The shade he left behind him was taken possession of, sustained, and operated upon so that it might appear to its admiring circle practically just as before. This seems at first to have been done by members of the lodge themselves. But apparently that arrangement was found irksome and unsuitable, or perhaps was considered a waste of force, and the same objection applied to the use for this purpose of an artificial elemental. So it was eventually decided that the departed person who would have been appointed to succeed the late spirit guide should still do so, but should take possession of the latter's shade or shell, and in fact simply wear his appearance. It is said that some members of the lodge objected to this on the ground that though the purpose might be entirely good, a certain amount of deception was involved. But the general opinion seems to have been that as the shade really was the same and contained something at any rate of the lower original manas, there was nothing that could be called deception in the matter. I mean, this is unbelievable. This, then, was the genesis of the human artificial entity. And it is understood that in some cases, more than one such a change has been made without arousing suspicion. Though, on the other hand, some investigators of spiritualism have remarked on the fact that after a considerable lapse of time, certain differences suddenly became observable in the manner and disposition of a spirit. It is needless to say that none of the Adept Brotherhood has ever approved of the formation of an artificial entity of this sort, though they could not interfere with anyone who thought it right to take such a course. A weak point in the arrangement is that many others besides the original lodge may adopt this plan, and there is nothing whatsoever to prevent black magicians from supplying communicating spirits, as indeed they have been known to do. With this class, we conclude our survey of the inhabitants of the astral plane. With the reservations specially made some few pages back, the catalog may be taken as fairly a complete one, but it must once more be emphasized that this treatise claims only to sketch the merest outline of a very vast subject, the detailed elaboration of which we would need a lifetime of study and hard work. So continuing on, the next segment is entitled Phenomena. Though in the course of this paper various superphysical phenomena have been mentioned and to some extent explained, it will perhaps, before concluding, be desirable so far to recapitulate as to give a list of those which are most frequently met with by the student of these subjects, and to show by which of these agencies we have attempted to describe they are usually caused. The resources of the astral world, however, are so varied that almost any phenomenon with which we are acquainted can be produced in several different ways, so that it is only possible to lay down general rules in the matter. Apparitions or ghosts furnish a very good instance of the remark just made, for in the loose manner in which the words are ordinarily used, they may stand for almost any inhabitant of the astral plane. Of course, psychically developed people are constantly seeing such things, but for an ordinary person to see a ghost, as the common expression runs, one of two things must happen. Either that ghost must materialize, or that person must have a temporary flash of psychic perception. But for the fact that neither of these events is a common one, ghosts would be met with in our streets as frequently as living people. If the ghost is seen hovering about a grave, it is probably the etheric shell of a newly buried person. Churchyard ghosts, though it may be the astral body of a living man haunting in sleep the tomb of a friend, or again, it may be materialized thought form, that is, an artificial elemental created by the energy with which a man thinks of himself as present at that particular spot. These varieties would be easily distinguishable from one from the other by anyone accustomed to using the astral vision. But an unpracticed person would be quite likely to call them vaguely ghosts. Apparitions at the time of death are by no means uncommon, and are very often really apparitions of the dying. Visits paid by the astral form of the dying man just before what we elect to call the moment of dissolution, though here again they are quite likely to be thought forms called into being by his earnest wish to see some friend once more before he passes into unfamiliar condition. Apparitions at the spot where some crime was committed are usually thought forms projected by the criminal, who, whether living or dead, but most especially when dead, haunted localities, and is perpetually thinking over and again and again and again the circumstances of his action. And since these thoughts are naturally specially vivid in his mind on the anniversary of the original crime, it is often only on that occasion that the artificial elementals he creates are strong enough to materialize themselves to the ordinary sight, a fact which accounts for the periodicity of some manifestations of this class. Another point in reference to such phenomena is that wherever any tremendous mental disturbance has taken place, wherever overwhelming terror, pain, sorrow, hatred, or indeed any kind of intense passion has been felt, an impression of so very marked a character has been made upon the astral light that a person with even the faintest glimmer of a psychic faculty cannot but be deeply impressed by it. And it would need but a slight temporary increase of sensibility to enable him to visualize the entire scene, to see the event in all its detail apparently taking place before his eyes. And in such a case, he would be, of course, report that the place was haunted and that he had seen a ghost. Indeed, people who are as yet unable to see psychically under any circumstances are frequently very unpleasantly impressed when visiting such places as we have mentioned. There are many, for example, who feel uncomfortable when passing the site of Tyburn Tree or cannot stay in the Chamber of Horrors at Madame Tussauds, though they may not be in the least aware that their discomfort is due to the dreadful impressions in the astral light which surround places and objects redolent of horror and crime, and to the presence of the loathsome astral entities which always swarm about such centers, family ghosts. The family ghosts whom we generally find in the stock stories of the supernatural as in a panage of the feudal castle may be either a thought form or an unusually vivid impression in the astral light. Or again, he may be really an earthbound ancestor still haunting the scenes in which his thoughts and hopes centered during life. Bell ringing, stone throwing, etc. Another class of hauntings which take the form of bell ringing, stone throwing, or the breaking of crockery, has already been referred to and is almost invariably the work of elemental forces, either set blindly in motion by the clumsy efforts of an ignorant person trying to attract the attention of his surviving friends, or intentionally employed by some childishly mischievous nature spirit. The nature spirits are responsible for whatever of truth there may be in fairies. All the strange fairy stories, which are so common in certain parts of the country, sometimes a temporary accession of clairvoyance, which is by no means uncommon among the inhabitants of lonely mountainous regions, enables some belated wayfarer to watch their joyous gambols. Sometimes strange tricks are played upon some terrified victim, and a glamour is cast over him, making him, for example, see houses and people where he knows none really exist. And this is frequently no mere momentary delusion, for a man will sometimes go through quite a long series of imaginary but most striking adventures, and then suddenly find that all his brilliant surroundings have vanished in a moment. leaving him standing in some lonely valley or in some windswept plain. On the other hand, it is by no means safe to accept, as founded on fact, all the popular legends on the subject. For the grossest superstition is often mingled with the theories of peasantry about these beings, as was shown by the recent terrible murder case in Ireland. To the same entities that must be attributed a large portion of what are called physical phenomena, a spiritualistic seances. Indeed, many a seance has been given entirely by these mischievous creatures, and such a performance might easily include many very striking items, such as the answering of questions and delivery of pretended message by raps or tilts, the exhibition of spirit lights, the apport of objects from a distance, the reading of thoughts which were in mind of any person present, the precipitation of writings or drawings, and even materializations. In fact, the nature spirits alone, if any of them happen to be disposed to take trouble, could give a seance equal to the most wonderful of which we read, for though they may be certain phenomena which they would not find it easy to reproduce, their marvelous power of glamour would enable them without difficulty to persuade the entire circle that these phenomena also had duly occurred, unless indeed there were present a trained observer who understood their arts and knew how to defeat them. As a general rule, whenever silly tricks or practical jokes are played at a seance, we may infer the presence either of low-class nature spirits or of human beings who were of sufficiently degraded type to find pleasure in such idiotic performances during life. As to the entities who may communicate at a seance or may obsess and speak through an entranced medium, their name is simply legion. There is hardly a communicating entity's single class among all the varied inhabitants of the astral plane from whose ranks they may not be drawn. Though after the explanations given, it will be readily understood that the chances are very much against their coming from a high one. A manifesting spirit may be exactly what it professes to be, but on the whole the probabilities are that it is nothing of the kind. And for the ordinary sitter, there is absolutely no means of distinguishing the true from the false, since the extent to which a being having all the resources of the astral plane at his command can delude a person on the physical plane is so great that no reliance can be placed even on what seems the most convincing proof. That means, whatever you get in a channeling session, always be skeptical of it. I always tell people that, just because you get something from a channeling session doesn't always mean it's absolutely true. Of course, in the case of John D., when you're being told, to strip mine the earth for resource to find something called silicone so you can create technology to break free from the etherical barrier placed around the earth to keep humans trapped here, that's a case where you might want to believe it. It's just too coincidental, a little too close to home there, especially in 16th century Victorian England, I mean, can you imagine? Strip mine the earth resources. What are they talking about? They're bloody mad, they are. Silicone? Oh, what is that? Even if it goes further and tells him something connected with his brother of which he himself was unaware, but which he afterwards verifies, he still realizes that even this may have been read from the astral record, or that what he sees before him may be only the shade of his brother and so possesses his memory without in any way being himself. It is not for the one moment denied that important communications have sometimes been made at seances by entities who, in such cases, have been precisely what they said they were. All that is claimed is that it is quite impossible for the ordinary person who visits a seance ever to be certain that he is not being cruelly deceived in one or the other, or of half a dozen different ways. So we'll stop right there for tonight. But interesting stuff there, and especially on, good advice on not trusting anything, in the spiritual realm. Motherfuckers are tricksters. And all they want is to be able to enact their energy on our material plane. For whatever reason, whether they get off on it or feed on it, who knows? But it's definitely one of those things where it can just be bad news if you don't know what you're messing with. theglobalreality.com is my website. Please go there and support our work. We do need your support right now to paying the bills. We are low in the old kitty, so please act accordingly and help us out if you can. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Josh Reeves, and I love each and every one of you. And we will see you next time for the show. You guys have yourselves a great one. Take care.